My own son betrayed me. He thought I would just sit quietly and take it. He was wrong, painfully wrong, because the day he crossed the line, I began planning my silent revenge.
I never imagined I would one day speak those words. A mother expecting betrayal from strangers is normal, but from her own child? It feels like losing a piece of your heart while still being forced to breathe. My name is Margaret. People call me Maggie. I've lived in this old house for over 24 years. Its walls carry memories, laughter, birthdays, Christmas mornings, spilled juice, and tiny handprints that used to decorate the fridge. Life once felt simple, warm, safe. But life changes quietly, like rust eating metal. You don't notice it at first until one day the whole structure collapses. The next morning, the sun rose like it always did, warm, gentle, almost mocking. Birds chirped outside as if the world was normal, but inside my chest, everything felt twisted. I prepared breakfast quietly, eggs, toast, his favorite coffee with just a pinch of sugar, the way he loved it when he was younger. It was a habit, muscle memory, from years when he would run into the kitchen smiling, asking what was for breakfast. Now, only silence answered me. Ethan came out late, half-dressed, phone in hand, typing rapidly. He barely acknowledged the plate I placed on the table. "Morning," I tried. Nothing. He simply grabbed a piece of toast, not even looking up, as if sharing space with me was a burden. Funny how love becomes invisible when it's taken for granted. "About last night," I began. "I don't have time, Mom," he cut in. He walked toward the door. No goodbye, no gratitude. Just footsteps fading away and a slam that echoed through my bones. I sat down at the table and stared at the empty chair across from me. It felt like a funeral, not of a person, but of the relationship we once had. Later that day, while cleaning his room, something I rarely did after he grew up, I found more surprises. Papers I wasn't meant to see. Loan information, receipts, late bills. My hands shook as I opened a small drawer and found a crumpled photograph. It was us, years ago. Ethan was 6, missing his front teeth, grinning wide with chocolate all over his shirt. My arms were around him and his tiny hands held mine, like he was my whole world. I ran my thumb over the image, and for a moment I saw flashes. Christmas mornings, school plays, birthday candles, bedtime stories. Where did that little boy go? My throat tightened, and I placed the photo back gently, but beneath it, something else caught my eye. A letter. Folded, wrinkled, almost as if it had been read too many times. I opened it slowly. Job termination notice. 3 months ago. So he lost his job. No wonder the bills piled up. No wonder his attitude changed. Pride, frustration, shame. They twist young men when they don't ask for help. He never told me. Not once. Instead, he pushed me away, like silence was easier than admitting pain. I couldn't confront him right away. Not with anger, not with tears. I waited. That evening, he returned even later, this time with laughter. Not his. Female voices outside. Then one giggly whisper, "Your place is cute." Cute? After all the debt? After all the secrets? He brought strangers home while our life was falling apart. They walked in, Ethan and a girl. She was young, stylish, maybe a year younger than him,
Polished nails, expensive phone, perfume like something foreign to this house. Ethan didn't even introduce her, just walked past me, hand in hers, acting like I was invisible furniture again. "Make yourselves comfortable," I said softly, polite, controlled. The girls smiled awkwardly. At least someone still had manners. They sat in the living room watching videos, laughing too loudly, while I stood in the kitchen doorway like a ghost haunting my own home. I wasn't jealous. I was heartbroken. And at this point, heartbreak began to transform into something sharper, resolute. As I cleaned the dishes later, I heard them argue. Quietly at first, then louder. "Ethan, you said you paid her back already," the girl snapped. "Paid who back? Me? Someone else?" "I'm working on it, okay?" he hissed. My hand froze over a wet plate. My ears sharpened like instincts waking up. "You owe me money, too," she said. "Don't think I'll wait forever." My heart sank. Not only was he in debt, he was borrowing from her. Their voices rose, tension cutting through the walls. "You promised," she insisted. "I said I'm trying. Just chill, all right? My mom's always on my case." "Maybe because you're living off her," she shot back. Days passed, and the distance between us spread like a growing crack on glass, thin at first, then wide enough to shatter everything underneath. Ethan barely spoke to me anymore. Mornings were silent. Nights were louder. Phone calls, arguments, whispers behind closed doors. His life became a secret wrapped in frustration and pride. And I watched quietly, like a storm forming behind calm eyes. One Thursday evening, I stood at the window trimming the dying leaves from my plants when Ethan rushed out of his room, dressed sharply, too sharply for someone unemployed. Black shirt, ironed pants, cologne I hadn't seen him use in months. "Going somewhere?" I asked gently. He hesitated, annoyance flickering in his eyes like a match. "Just out." "With the same girl?" "Maybe. Why do you care?" "I'm your mother. Caring is my job." He looked away, jaw tight, sigh heavy. "Mom, stop making everything about you." "Everything? About me?" A strange numbness washed over me. I didn't even respond. He left, door slamming again like punctuation to every wound. I poured myself tea and sat at the dining table alone. Minutes passed, then an hour, then several. The clock struck midnight when headlights flashed again outside. Kidding myself, I thought maybe he returned to talk, to apologize, to soften. But it wasn't him. Two men stood on the porch. Tall, sharp-dressed, not friendly. One knocked, slow, deliberate. My heart pounded. I opened the door halfway. "Good evening, ma'am. We're looking for Ethan." Their smiles were polite, but not kind. Business smiles. Debt smiles. "He's not home," I said carefully. "May I ask?" One stepped forward slightly. "He owes us money, a lot more than he told you." Ice spread through my veins. My voice trembled, barely a whisper. "How much?" Enough to make me grip the doorframe to stay steady. He said he'd pay today. He didn't. They didn't threaten, not with words. Their eyes did enough. "Tell him we came by." They left. I stood frozen in the doorway long after their silhouettes faded into the night. My son, the boy I held through fever nights, The child who cried at nightmares and hid in my arms now had strangers coming to my door asking for money he couldn't pay. Not angry at them. Angry at him? No, not even that. Just heartbroken and strangely calm. I waited in the dim living room until he returned, much later, laughing with the same girl. She noticed me first, standing in the shadows like a faded photograph of the past. Hi, she said awkwardly. Ethan's smile disappeared when he saw my expression. We need to talk. His shoulders tensed. He tried to brush past me, but I stepped forward. Men came to the house, Ethan. They're looking for you. Silence. The girl's eyes widened. You told me you handled it, she whispered harshly. He didn't answer. Couldn't. How much do you owe, Ethan? My voice was steady. Too steady. I'll fix it, he muttered. By borrowing more? Lying more? Running from responsibility like a child? His jaw clenched. He exploded. You don't understand. You never have. I'm trying, okay? Life is hard. I lost my job. I'm drowning. I know you lost your job. I found the letter, I said, quietly. His face turned pale. Not just pale, guilty. I was going to tell you. He lied. You brought strangers to our home, I continued gently. You hid debt. You shut me out. You treat me like an obstacle rather than your mother. He said nothing. His silence was louder than anger. The girl placed her purse strap on her shoulder. I'm not getting dragged into this, she said coldly. Ethan, call me when you have the money. She left. He stared at the ground, fists trembling, with shame, frustration, everything he tried to bury. You didn't ask me to snoop in my things, he said. I didn't snoop. I cleaned. I cared. I noticed. Something you haven't done for me in months. He looked up, and for a second, the old Ethan flashed through. The scared boy beneath the stubborn man. But pride is a dangerous shield. You can't pay it anyway, he muttered. Something snapped inside me, not in anger, but realization. He didn't trust me. He didn't see me as support. He saw me as weak. My voice turned soft, painfully soft. Ethan, do you really think I'm that helpless? He shrugged, looked away. Mom, please, I don't need your help. Just stay out of it. Stay out of it. I nodded slowly. All right, I whispered. If that's what you want, I'll stay out. His shoulders relaxed, thinking he won. Thinking silence meant obedience. But silence now meant strategy. Because that night, as he went to his room and blasted music to drown his problems, I sat with a notebook, and I began writing. All debts, all due dates, all contact names, all opportunities, all situations where he needed me. Not to pay for him, not to rescue him blindly, but to teach him the lesson he refused to learn with words, to make him see the value of what he was throwing away. I wasn't planning revenge out of hatred. I was planning awakening, quietly, patiently, because sometimes the only way to save someone is to let them feel what losing you truly means. And Ethan was about to feel it, every step, every consequence, every silence. He would learn that day. A mother's quiet is not weakness, it is strength preparing. And when I finally moved, he would never forget it.
The days that followed felt like walking across thin ice. Every conversation between us was short, clipped, held together by threads ready to snap. I watched him come home later and later, saw the tiredness under his eyes, heard the stress in his footsteps. He was drowning, but he pushed away the only hand still reaching for him. One evening, I heard soft knocks on his bedroom door. "Mom, can we talk?" His voice surprised me. Soft, almost small. A piece of hope rose in my chest. "Of course," I said, stepping in. He sat on the edge of his bed. Messy sheets, clothes scattered, air heavy with frustration and cologne. He looked up like a child who had finally accepted defeat. "I need help." Just 2 words, but they carried years of weight. I sat beside him. "Tell me." "I found a job interview," he muttered, rubbing his hands together. "Tomorrow, but I need money for transport, for proper clothes, something to look decent. I don't have any left." He looked at me with eyes that begged, not for money, but for belief. And my heart, foolish and motherly, softened. "How much do you need?" He told me the amount. Not much, manageable. I opened my drawer and handed him the money, carefully saved for groceries and bills. He took it quickly, relief washing over his face like sunrise. "Thank you, Mom. I'll make it right. I promise." But one thing about promises, they mean little without action. The next morning, I woke up early, prepared him breakfast, ironed one of his father's old shirts, good fabric, respectful, perfect for an interview. But hours passed. The chair at the table stayed empty. Ethan didn't come home. Afternoon turned to evening, evening turned to night. My mind spun with worry. Had he gone to the interview? At 10 p.m., he finally entered. Not dressed in that shirt, not carrying papers, not hopeful. He stumbled in laughing with 2 friends, loud, carefree, holding takeout bags and shopping bags. Shopping. With the interview money. I froze mid-step. "Ethan," I said quietly, "how was the interview?" His laughter faded. He avoided my eyes. "What interview?" one friend joked. "We hit the mall instead. This guy needed new kicks. Look." He lifted his foot to show shoes. Expensive ones. Shoes worth more than the money I gave. My heart sank like a stone tossed into deep water. "Ethan," I whispered, "tell me you didn't use the money for—" "Relax, Mom," he interrupted. "I'll pay you back." "You promised me," I said, voice trembling. "You said this was for your future. I will fix it. Why are you always on my back?" His friends exchanged uncomfortable glances. One muttered, "Bro, let's go." They slipped out quickly, sensing tension as thick as smoke. Now it was just us, mother and son, a battlefield of broken trust between us. Words spilled from me, not angry, just deeply wounded. "I gave you that money believing you wanted to change, and you spent it like it meant nothing." His jaw tightened. Pride again. The same wall always between us. "It's my life," he snapped. "Stop interfering." Interfering. Not supporting. Not caring. Interfering. Something inside me shattered. Quietly, like a candle going out. My voice steadied, with a calm I didn't even recognize. "Ethan, you're an adult, and adults face their consequences." He shrugged.
Do whatever you want. I don't care. He walked to his room. Door half closed. He didn't slam this time. That almost hurt worse. He said one last sentence before it clicked shut. You're not the boss of me. I stood in the hallway as silence expanded like dark water. That was the final betrayal. Not the money, not the lies, not the broken promise. It was the disrespect, the dismissal, the blindness to the love holding his world together. And in that moment, the plan stopped being notes in a book. It became action, a quiet revenge, not violent, not cruel, a lesson shaped with patience, like a gardener pruning a dying tree, not to kill it, but to make it grow again. Because sometimes you must let someone fall so they learn how to stand. Ethan believed I would always catch him. He was wrong. For the first time in my life, I stepped back. I turned off the Wi-Fi that night, the one I paid for. I disconnected the streaming services, canceled subscriptions tied to my card, turned the thermostat down. No more endless electricity for late-night gaming. The next morning, his shock echoed through the house. Mom, Wi-Fi's down. I stirred my coffee. Come. Oh, must be the bills. Money is tight. He froze, realization flickering behind his eyes. You can fix it, right? I looked at him kindly, but with new steel in my gaze. No, Ethan, you said you didn't need my help. Silence. He felt the first ripple of consequences. Only the beginning. He thought I'd stay silent, but silence was just the start of my response. And he had no idea what came next.
The morning after the Wi-Fi and comforts disappeared, Ethan woke up to a different world. One built on responsibility, not convenience. He came out of his room with messy hair, rubbing his eyes like a child who'd lost his favorite toy. Mom, this isn't funny. I need the internet. I looked up from the dining table, where I was quietly sorting bills, papers spread out, calculator in hand. You do, I agreed softly. And adults pay for what they need. He stared at me, waiting for the usual compromise, the usual softening. But I didn't bend this time. Come on, he sighed, sinking into the chair. Just pay it. I'll handle it later. I met his eyes, steady, unwavering. You said I interfere, so I'll step back, completely. You can take care of your needs now. He opened his mouth, then closed it, stunned. He wasn't used to boundaries. My silence was stronger than any argument. After that, things changed like gears shifting in a machine. He woke up to an empty fridge. I started buying only basic groceries. No more snacks, no more sodas, no more takeout deliveries. His laundry stayed where he left it. I stopped picking it up. I locked the cabinet where I kept emergency cash. Little by little, I withdrew the safety net he never appreciated. Not to punish him, but to let responsibility wash over him like cold water. Days passed. At first, he was annoyed, then irritated, then confused. He tried asking again, Mom, when will things go back to normal? I gently placed groceries on the counter. Rice, beans, a few vegetables. When you start going back to normal? He blinked. Meaning, respect, effort, accountability. He scoffed and walked away, pride still clinging to him like armor. But life has a way of softening armor when the world gets heavy. The first crack. A week later, I came home from work to see him sitting on the couch, head in hands, surrounded by unfolded laundry and dirty dishes. He looked lost, tired, human. "Mom, can we talk?" he said quietly. That sentence again. But this time, the tone was different, humble, unsure. I sat beside him. "I've been trying to apply for jobs, but without internet, it's hard." "Did you try the public library?" I asked gently. He frowned. It hadn't even crossed his mind. "You can use their computers for free, but you'll have to wake up early. The good seats fill fast." He nodded slowly, processing. No argument, no attitude, just thoughtfulness. "Mom, can you help me with my resume?" he murmured, voice softer than I'd heard in years. "I will guide you, but I won't do it for you." He swallowed, accepting terms he never faced before. "Okay." A small word, but it felt like a door unlocking. So, that night we sat at the dining table. He'd typed, I instructed. Remove slang, write clearly, show pride in your work. When he made mistakes, I didn't fix them. I showed him how to fix them himself. It was slow, frustrating, but it was growth. At one point, he looked up and asked quietly, "Why are you helping me after everything?" I smiled. Not bitter, but wise. "Because I love you. But love isn't supposed to make life easy. It's supposed to make you better." His eyes shimmered, guilt, gratitude, something unspoken. He looked down and whispered, "I'm sorry for what I said." I nodded, accepting but not erasing. Apologies mean nothing without change. Show me, don't tell me. He nodded firmly, a spark of determination. The strategy deepened. Over the next weeks, I structured his life like scaffolding around a collapsing building, gentle but firm. He woke up early, with me knocking on his door, then later by his own alarm. He cooked his own meals, burned the first few, but then got better. He cleaned his room, slowly transforming chaos into order. He attended interviews, nervous but present. I watched him learn things most kids know at 16, but he learned them at 22. And sometimes growth is delayed, but never impossible. One evening, he burst through the door, eyes wide, breath rushing. "Mom!" he called. "I got a call back. Second interview." My heart swelled, not with relief, but with pride. But my plan was not over. There was one final step. The moment he would truly understand my silence wasn't abandonment. It was love taking shape as wisdom. And that lesson would come with impact. Unforgettable, life-changing. He thought he'd seen my response. But the real revelation, the moment he'd face everything, was still ahead. Because revenge isn't always destruction. Sometimes revenge is transformation. And the climax of this story...
2 weeks later, on a bright Thursday morning, Ethan put on the only formal shirt he owned, slightly wrinkled, sleeves too long, color a bit loose. He stood in front of the mirror, fixing his hair like he was preparing for battle. "How do I look?" he asked. Not arrogant, not demanding, just hopeful. I stepped closer and straightened his collar gently.
You look like a man who's trying, I said, and that matters more than perfection. He smiled, small, sincere, and for the first time in a long while, I saw my little boy inside his tired eyes. He left for the interview with determined footsteps. I watched from the window as he walked toward the bus stop, head high, back straight. Public transport instead of the car he'd taken for granted. Choices shape us more than comfort ever could. Hours pass, and then the call. I sat in the kitchen, waiting, cleaning, pacing, boiling tea I wouldn't drink. Then my phone rang. Ethan? My heart paused. His voice was shaky, but not defeated. Mom, I think it went well. They'll email me the result. Pride spread through me like warm sunlight. Whatever happens, I told him, I'm proud that you tried. He didn't speak for a second, then whispered, thank you. Not sarcastic, not forced, grateful. That night, he sat with me at the kitchen table, not across the room with headphones, not locked in his room. He cooked dinner, simple pasta, and we ate together. It wasn't perfect, but it tasted like progress. Halfway through the meal, he put down his fork. Mom, you changed. I looked at him, surprised. He continued, voice thick with something heavy. You used to do everything for me, even when I was rude, even when I didn't deserve it. I thought you'd never stop. He took a shaky breath. But when you finally did, it scared me, like I was standing without ground under my feet. My chest tightened. He wasn't angry anymore. He was reflecting. He looked down at his hands. I didn't realize how much I leaned on you until you moved away. Silence, but a healing one. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. Ethan, love is not chains. It's wings. I wasn't supposed to hold you forever. I was supposed to let you fly. For the first time, a tear rolled down his cheek. Quiet, ashamed. Mom, I'm sorry. For the letters, for how I spoke to you. I didn't just disrespect you. I forgot who raised me. I let his words sit, not rushing to forgive instantly. Lessons must settle. Finally, I squeezed his hand. I forgive you, because you're trying, and that's enough. He exhaled, relief shaking through his shoulders. But the story wasn't done yet. Life always adds one final twist, the moment that changes everything. The email arrives, and the twist hits hard. 3 days later, while I was folding clothes in the living room, Ethan burst in. Mom, he shouted, breathless, I got the job. He ran to me with a smile so wide it made years of pain worth it. But right behind excitement was something unexpected. Fear. He held my shoulders gently. But I need to confess something before I start this new chapter. My heart slowed. Go on. He swallowed hard, eyes filled with guilt. Mom, those loans you found, they weren't just from careless spending. My stomach dropped, but I stayed silent. He continued, voice trembling. I borrowed money to invest in a startup my friend convinced me about. I lost everything. I was embarrassed. I thought you'd call me stupid, so I hid it. And when you confronted me, I lashed out because I was ashamed. His voice cracked, raw and vulnerable. I lost Dad, and I didn't want you to see me as another disappointment. My heart broke, not from betrayal this time, but understanding. Ethan, you could have come to me, I whispered. I know. His voice was barely a breath. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a folded paper. I talked to the bank. We can restructure the loan if I show consistent income. I want to fix this. Not you, me. And that was the real climax. Not revenge, not punishment. Transformation. The son who once slammed doors now stood tall with accountability in his hands. I felt tears I didn't know I'd been holding finally fall. Not from pain, but healing. I opened my arms and he stepped into them as a man returning.
I'm proud of you, I whispered into his shoulder. Not because you succeeded, but because you changed. He nodded against me. Mom, thank you for staying silent. It saved me.
The weeks that followed were quiet, but the kind of quiet that carried hope. Ethan moved through the house differently now, not careless, not entitled, but aware. Breakfasts were no longer silent. He helped set the table. Sometimes he even asked what I wanted to eat. Small gestures, but each one was a brick rebuilding the trust we had lost. Taking responsibility. Ethan started his new job, a modest position in an office with early mornings and hard work. He came home tired, but his pride was palpable, the kind that comes from earning, not taking. And the loans, slowly, carefully, he began paying them back. I didn't track every cent. That wasn't my role anymore. The lesson had been delivered. Responsibility, accountability, and integrity are earned through action, not promises. One evening, he came to me with a small envelope. He said, "I know this doesn't fix everything, but I want to start making things right." Inside was the first repayment toward the money he had mismanaged. I held it not as cash, but as proof of transformation. "You're doing well," I told him, and that's all I ever wanted. Healing the relationship. More importantly, our conversations changed. We talked not just about bills, responsibilities, and mistakes, but about life, dreams, and regrets. One night, sitting at the kitchen table, Ethan looked at me and asked, "Mom, did you ever regret giving me space to fail?" I paused. My silence wasn't punishment. It was trust. Trust that you could learn from consequences. Trust that you could grow. And trust that love doesn't always mean rescuing someone from every mistake. He nodded slowly, eyes misting. I get it now. I really do. For the first time in years, I saw the man who could finally stand on his own. Not because I forced him, not because I demanded obedience, but because I stayed silent long enough for him to find his own strength. The symbolic closure. One weekend we went to the park, the same one where I had pushed him on the swings as a child. The wind was crisp, carrying the scent of fall. He laughed as I pretended to be a child again, pushing him gently on the swing. "You know," I said softly, "I could have stopped helping, stopped caring, but I never stopped loving." He smiled, wide, genuine, unguarded. "And that's what changed me. Your silence taught me more than anything words ever could." We sat on the bench, watching the leaves fall. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was calm. It was peace. And for the first time in a long time, I felt it in our home. Moral and reflection. The truth is, sometimes silence can be louder than anger. Sometimes withdrawal is stronger than confrontation. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't shouting, fighting, or punishing. It's letting consequences teach the lesson we cannot force with words. Ethan learned that respect, responsibility, and accountability are not given freely. They are earned through mistakes, failures, and the courage to rise. And I learned too. I learned that love doesn't always mean rescue. It doesn't always mean protection. Sometimes love is the patience to wait, to guide quietly, and to stand firm in principles while letting someone find their own way. Final scene. Weeks turned into months. Ethan became reliable, hardworking, and thoughtful. He started repaying debts. He came home not just to eat, but to share life. And one evening, as I poured tea for us both, he smiled and said, "Mom, thank you for everything, for staying silent,
for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. I smiled back, my heart full. You're welcome, Ethan, and thank you for learning. The house was quiet that night, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was calm, steady, full of understanding, respect, and love. He thought I would stay silent, but he never expected how powerful that silence could be. And in the end, it changed everything.